Mr. Bill. Hello, sir.
Hey, Ben.
All right. Good. All right, Bill. I'm not going to lie to you. You're one of the few. I know maybe a dozen attorneys in my life.
I'm sorry.
You're one of them that's most likely to talk to me if I ask them a question.
The rest of them see the phone number. They're like, oh no. Fuck
The rest
that.
of them are like, oh my God, this dude again. Okay. Would you agree so much has happened at USPSA in the last couple weeks?
Yes.
So much has happened.
So much.
Okay.
Keeping track of it's almost a full-time job.
It it almost is. Okay, so to the layperson, to me, I look at this like, okay, so this guy Joe is suing USPSA, and now we've discovered USPSA like they haven't done the correct paperwork, haven't done the correct thing in Delaware, so they're not like officially a deal anymore. To me, as I look at this, like one scenario on one end of the spectrum, like let's say USPSA files some paperwork in Delaware, maybe they stroke a check for some amount of money, right?
Right.
Maybe they go to a judge or they talk to the judge in the Joe suing them case, and that just gets dismissed. That is one end of the spectrum as far as the scenarios that can happen.
Right.
The other end of the spectrum is all of the evil members of the board of directors are held personally liable for all of their many wrongdoings. And Joe gets a bunch of money and he gets free dick sucks and all this stuff, and it's amazing for him.
Right. Those are pretty much the two extremes.
Those are the two extremes.
It'll probably be somewhere in the middle.
Yes. Yes. So tell me, what will it probably, like, what is going to happen here?
Okay.
What's going on?
Yeah.
What's happening with USPSA?
I'm not licensed in Delaware, so this is all just me kind of looking at it as an outsider.
Yes. Me too. Great. I'm not licensed in Delaware either. So we're pretty much equals in this, Bill. We're basically equals.
Yeah. I mean, I might as well call you and ask you what your opinion is.
Yeah, exactly. That's great.
So as far as the corporation goes, in Delaware, they will probably have to, it's most likely that they just have to pay their back franchise taxes and maybe file some back annual reports.
Is that a big number? Do you know?
I don't think it's a big number. I think because USPSA is a nonprofit, it's going to be kind of a trivial amount.
Okay.
And I think mainly all they will have to do is get their paperwork right, which from the documents, the last exhibit in Joe's complaint particularly, it looks like the last time they did any of that stuff with the state of Delaware was 2015. And the state will hold on to, essentially kind of reserve your name and your corporation for 3 years before voiding it. And the USPSA corporation was voided in March of 2018. So and all that means is that anyone, Joe Britkowski could have done it, you could have done it, I could have done it. Since 2018, could have registered a corporation with the name the United States Practical Shooting Association /IPSC in Delaware, and then when USPSA tried to get current, they would have to change their name.
Well, that would be pretty funny. I'm not going to lie.
It would be hilarious. The lawsuit with Joe is a little more interesting.
Have you read through that?
So
for those who don't know, there's like a 263 page or something like that. There's a bunch of
270 something pages. The complaint is the first 24 pages, and then after that is all exhibits. So there's 250 pages of exhibits.
So what did you make of that lawsuit? You've skimmed it at least, yeah?
Yeah. The real meat and potatoes of what Joe is asking for is on pages 22 and 23 of the complaint.
Okay.
And it's essentially that his membership was wrongfully terminated, so he wants to be put back in as a member. And the reason it was wrongfully terminated was USPSA didn't follow its own rules, and it didn't follow the rules of the state of Delaware. And
does he make a good case for that? I feel.
It looks.
Did you feel with the exhibits?
I think with the exhibits. The other thing about the complaint is that at the end of the complaint, Joe signs a affidavit saying essentially that everything in this is true and correct to the best of his knowledge, and he has personal knowledge of these factual matters, and he's swearing under penalty of perjury that it's all true.
Is that good?
It's much stronger than if you just put a bunch of facts in a complaint and then throw it out, because they might be true, they might not. He's saying they are true to the best of his knowledge. The really interesting thing, I think, is the claims he makes about the bylaws. And what he says is that none of the bylaw amendments or changes have been made essentially ever in the history of USPSA have been done in compliance with the laws of Delaware.
Is there any way that could be true to your knowledge, like based on what you know? You practice in Arkansas, yeah?
I practice in Arkansas.
Okay.
It could be true. I don't have knowledge of all of USPSA's bylaws going back to 1985.
Yeah, of course. That's a big claim to make. That be like, oh, these guys don't follow the bylaws and they don't follow the law in my state. It's like that's a pretty big claim, right?
It is a big claim. It rests primarily on the certificate of incorporation for USPSA, and that certificate of incorporation gives the organization and the board certain powers, and under Delaware law, everything else is kind of reserved to the membership. It is my understanding.
Okay.
So like the one thing that Delaware law says you have to have in the certificate of incorporation is that if the board of directors is able to change the bylaws or modify, amend, remove, whatever, they have to be given that power in the certificate of incorporation.
Okay.
And USPSA's certificate mentions bylaws several times. It never gives the board of directors the power to modify or amend them.
Wait, hold on. So, Bill, just this is news to me. So what I've understood is that USPSA has freely, like the board, they have modified the bylaws many, many times throughout.
That's my understanding.
The tenure that I had at USPSA.
For 5 years, and they've modified them several times in the last 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, this is like a regular thing. It was like at least annual or semi-annual thing for a while. It was a thing that they did. So you're saying that has to be granted it has to be stipulated or whatever in their articles of incorporation?
Right. And even if it's stipulated in the articles of incorporation, the members of a nonprofit, non-stock corporation, which is what USPSA is, the members can vote to adopt, amend, or repeal bylaws.
What do you mean they can vote? We don't get to vote on these changes.
It's funny you mentioned that. We are entitled to vote. Now,
explain. What are you talking about? Like, what is this? We don't vote on any of this shit. We can vote for your area director and the president, maybe. But so, what are you saying?
This is why I said this. I thought was the most interesting part, because essentially USPSA has never followed Delaware law. If what Joe's saying is right, like the original bylaws for USPSA should have been voted on by the members of USPSA. And any changes or modifications to those bylaws would also have to been approved by the members of USPSA. It's section 109 of the Delaware Corporate Code.
Okay. Well, that is interesting. So, like, okay. So let's say USPSA is doing it all wrong. They're not following Delaware law. All this and this. It's all bad. What could what could happen? And what like worst case for USPSA? What could happen?
Worst case for USPSA is if, and Joe talks about this a little bit as it relates to his suspension in his complaint. Anything that USPSA does that it doesn't have the power to do, like change bylaws or what have you, those acts are void. So any changes to, going back 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty much impossible to like unwind all that stuff. Like how does that even work?
I have no idea how that would work. They could. Yeah, I have no idea.
So wait. So what you're saying, this would be up to a judge to just kind of just decide
at that point, it would be
what the hell's going to happen.
Are we going to roll it all the way back? Are we going to say nobody complained until now, so we're going to roll it back to like 5 years ago? I don't know.
Jesus. Okay. All right. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit. So Joe's complaint is what? That like they kicked him out. He wants 25 grand or whatever. Like he wants some money. They're doing all this bad stuff. What do you make of the lawsuit itself that Joe filed? Based on, you do like bankruptcy stuff, right?
Yeah. Bankruptcy.
So what do you? But what do you make of this? Like, does this have any legs? It's not. It seems like, well, what's going to happen? I don't know.
It's hard to say what's going to happen. It's going to have, the really interesting part about this is going to be what comes out in discovery. And Joe is going to be able to propound discovery on the organization and all of the other named defendants. So all of the board members at the time he was kicked out. And so that's going to be able to go after anything related to his suspension, whether it's organization emails, personal emails, text messages, whatever they've got.
Jesus.
And a lot of the exhibits we've seen before with Practical Shooting Insights posting emails and whatnot.
I didn't see a ton of new stuff in there. It was just new stuff in there either. It was just a condensed version of like, hey, this is how the board has been doing all this stuff, and these guys are kind of colluding behind the scenes. There's an outcome in mind for how it's going to go and all that.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not crazy thinking that.
No, you're not. And the other interesting part is he cites to a Delaware Supreme Court case from, I think, 91 that says that the board of a nonprofit corporation can't vote to remove members of that nonprofit. Yeah,
that's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay.
And that would have interesting ramifications for, we've been kicking out people who cheat. So
yes. Well, no, they haven't been kicking those people out. They kick out people who complain about them not kicking out the people that cheat, I think, is a better way of putting it.
Right.
Being one of the people they kicked out, of course. Yeah. A bit of an expert on that, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But like the +2 guy would have a reason to get back in if you're not allowed to kick out members.
Yeah, that's true. Paul Hendricks getting back in would be hysterically funny. Okay, there's another thing I want to ask you about. Maybe I probably should ask this first, but okay, so I'm seeing some talk like, hey, this USPSA doesn't exist. Like they haven't filed the stuff in Delaware. They haven't paid the whatever. They don't exist officially. So like, how does that work? Like, so they didn't pay the stuff. And I think we discussed this another time, I think, like, hey, after 3 years, they gotta after 3 years they got to refile all this shit, like something like that?
Yeah, I looked into that a little bit. Delaware has a provision where if you've if your corporation has been voided like this, whether it's or for any reason, whether if the charter has been forfeited, you can revive the corporation. And
okay, so hold
you just
on.
have to do what you should have done.
Okay, so USPSA, you would say, is voided or is not a legitimate charter or something?
Right. So the effect of that is essentially that USPSA can't sue anyone, and for it to file anything in court, it would have to get current and get back in good standing.
How complicated is that?
The only complicated part is like what we talked about before. If somebody else steals USPSA's name,
I think some howler monkey is probably going to do that at this point.
That would not.
If they haven't already,
it would not surprise me if about 10 people had put in applications as soon as Joe Insight started posting about this complaint.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So let's say USPSA is not, they haven't done their paperwork or whatever. What does that matter? Like what happens? So what I'm saying is, so Joe is suing USPSA. So let's say USPSA is not legitimate or not valid or whatever. What the hell happens? Do they kick the lawsuit? What do they do?
No, they won't kick the lawsuit. If USPSA doesn't get current, it won't be able to file an answer to the.
Okay.
So you file a complaint.
Is that bad? Like what does that matter? Explain how that's bad.
So if you file a lawsuit against anyone, you file a complaint.
Yeah.
And then once they're served, they have some amount of time to file an answer. In Arkansas, it's 30 days. You have to file the answer. So for USPSA to file an answer, it'll have to get back in good standing with Delaware.
Okay.
And
that could be done. Conceivably, could that be done in 30 days based on what you know about different states and how this type of deal works?
Yes. Again, Arkansas, you can probably take care of that in a week.
Okay. So it's not crazy to say, yeah, they'll get up to date, they'll file the answer. Not an issue.
Right.
Okay.
Probably. Yeah, I don't see that being an issue.
As long as no howler monkey stole the name.
Right. And if someone steals the name, they'll have to file an answer under whatever their new name is.
That's funny. Okay. So that's not necessarily a big deal, right? The USPSA doesn't really officially exist.
Right.
Okay.
I don't think it's a big deal. When I first heard about it, I was coming up with all these wild scenarios where it was a big deal. I after looking at Delaware law a little bit, it looks like Delaware doesn't dissolve corporations automatically when this type of thing happens, because what they want is they want to get paid. And for big for-profit corporations, the filing fees depend on the number of shares and that stuff, and they top out at like $200,000 or $250,000 a year.
Okay.
For USPSA, if they have to pay anything for the franchise tax for each year at all, it's going to be a couple $100.
So this is not significant. It's just a kind of an interesting situation.
Right.
Okay. So all of that having been said, so not a huge deal. This like USPSA doesn't exist idea that I've seen, not a huge deal. USPSA has to file an answer. Okay. Joe filed a lawsuit. Okay, I understand. What could potentially happen here with this deal, with this lawsuit? I mean, to me, like I kind of like my intuition says the same as you. Like, I don't think there'll be big shit that the court orders to happen. I think the discovery, thus us learning more information, is the headline of the lawsuit.
Right.
Is that correct? Like, what do you say? Like, could the court conceivably order anything that would matter? Like in the big scheme of things, right?
In the big scheme of things, the court will probably like I don't see it ruling on Joe getting back into the organization because Joe's suspension was effective like end of October last year, and it was for 1 year. So
Yeah.
at that point, it'll be moot. He'll be able to get back in anyway.
Yes. Okay.
So the court, they have 30. If they have 30 days to file an answer in Ohio, that's bumping up right against that suspension expiration date anyway.
Yeah.
I don't see. I think Joe would have to prove that this was done out of personal animus against him. Where
I think he's got some evidence pointing that direction, right?
He's, some of the emails. It's like it's your turn to deal with Joe.
It's like, hey, string him up.
String
that
him
one.
Up. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one. That's a good email.
It is. All of that certainly indicates that there's not a friendly relationship here.
No,
they will be
really
looking for more of that type of thing.
What would a court need to see to be like, oh, it's personal animus?
It would probably need something like, we need to get this guy, more emails than just one saying, we got to get rid of this guy. If we get rid of him, that'll make this problem go away. Speaking about Cameo, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which, we've talked about this before. Once they kick you out, they can't do anything else to you. So
they kick you out. It's pretty much like,
shut up. You're just going to turn the heat up even more.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to turn the heat up even more.
Right.
Some people would shut up. That's kind of weird to me, but yeah. Okay. Bill, I think this is a very sort of reasonable interpretation and information about the lawsuit. So really what you'd be looking at personally is the discovery.
Yeah, I'd be looking at the discovery. As far as stuff against Joe personally, I'd be looking into the discovery. I'd also be looking for anything about, did you guys get any letters from the Secretary of State of Delaware saying that, the corporation wasn't in compliance? Or did you get any?
I'm sure they wouldn't ignore those letters. That would be terrible if they did that. That'd be
right.
bad. No way that happens. That's impossible.
Yeah. Probably look at anything to see if there are any records of any member vote on bylaws, which he said that the members have never voted. So not in my recollection. I don't know about that. So but that's a side issue, right? It looks like a side issue. I almost think that it's going to end up being the bigger issue in the lawsuit, because especially if say the original bylaws didn't have any provision for kicking someone out, and then the board of directors put one in.
Yeah.
Then the board of directors didn't have the authority to put one in.
Yeah, because they're not allowed to modify the bylaws according to the corporate charter. Okay, yeah, I understand. Okay, so you'll be watching the discovery. I guess you'll be watching what the judge does.
Right, and we might not get to see the discovery. It depends on whether the judge enters a protective order. I'm sure USPSA will ask for one, because they're like, people leak this stuff online and it makes us look bad. And
they leak it online? You mean they post it online?
Right.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if USPSA and the other defendants ask for a protective order to keep Joe from putting all of this stuff out there.
That nasty Joe. He's always trying to put out information for people. That son of a bitch. All right. Is there anything else you think like people should be aware of or should know about? Or if people are looking at this kind of interested, is there anything else you'd want to say? Like, hey, no, you should know this. Because like, to me, it's a big deal to be like, when a lot of people are saying, hey, USPSA doesn't even exist. It's not even real under, like, it just dissolved. Like, that's what you're saying is like, hey, they're going to file some stuff. They'll like write a check for some money, like a few hundred. It's not going to matter effectively.
It's essentially the same thing as you do with an LLC in your state. You have to pay a fee every year. And if you don't, they send you a postcard and say, "Hey, where's our money?"
No, they send me a postcard. They say you have to pay a fee now, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then I pay the fee. I've never gotten past that first step. I'm not enough of a dumb shit to get past the first step of like not paying the a few dozen dollars. It's a few dozen dollars. It's $35, I think, to my recollection in Wisconsin to have an LLC.
Yeah, I think here in Arkansas it's 50, maybe $150.
Wow.
However much it is, it's not a break the bank amount of money.
The dollar amount doesn't matter as much as the being in compliance with the law thing.
Right. And the state wants you to be in compliance with the law because, you have to make sure your registered agent is up to date. So that
of course,
if anybody sues you or if the state wants to send you anything, it's going to send it to that address.
That's great. That's wonderful for them. Okay. Well, Bill, if you've got nothing else, I mean, this is very informative. I think it's a very a sort of realistic interpretation of these events. So, how about this?
The only other thing I would say is that none of this is going to get resolved anytime soon. Like, the lawsuits take forever.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if this took until 2025 before it even got to trial. If it goes to trial.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's say this. Like, what if you're looking at USPSA, you don't really like USPSA, and you think that this is funny?
It is funny.
Yeah, it's objectively funny.
It's funny.
That's pretty much where I'm at. I don't really like these people, and I find this funny.
You have to file this thing every year. It's like, well, we haven't filed it. When was the last time you filed it? 2015. It's like, that's
it's just like, how do you not file it? It's not that hard. What the fuck? They send you the thing. You go on the website, you fill out the shit, you put in your credit card. Boom, it's done. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
Jesus. Bill, great talk. If you guys have questions, comments, put them down below. And if there's enough like critical mass, you need to hear something, we'll get Bill back on and we'll talk about it. Thank you, Bill. Very much appreciated, sir.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you.